All right. Hello, everyone out there. Thank you for tuning in to episode 2 of Let This Mind Podcast. If you joined us for episode 1, we discussed wounded healers and had a great discussion on that. On tonight's episode, what we're going to be talking about are exploring the idea around broken homes and families. So, um, if you don't know who I am, my name is Chris Melville. BSW. I'm a social worker. I'm a wounded healer, father, artist, and I'm joined by my two lovely co-hosts, and I'll let them take it away with the introductions.
Hey everybody, it's your girl, Steph Jones, aka Lilac Calandra. Happy to be here again for episode 2 with my amazing co-host. We're talking about broken homes. As a therapist, as a life coach, as a minister, we see broken homes all the time. Not necessarily from the children, but from the adults who came from the broken homes. They exhibit certain things. You can tell who was raised in a broken home if you're unhealed. So we're going to explore some things, get into some things. I'm excited to dive in.
Mm-hmm. Hey again, everybody. Jamae Harrison here. There's letters there, LMHC, which basically means I did a lot of schooling and a lot of testing.
Woo!
But anyway, I am excited to be back for episode 2, Broken Homes. Like Steph said, when you work in the field, you see it, you hear about it all the time, not just from kids. I have like 46, 53-year-old clients who are still healing from what happened to them as a child. So I'm excited to talk about it. I'm excited to dig deep into it. So let's go.
Awesome. All right. We have some definitions for how we want to kind of define, this topic for tonight. Um, I know we talked about, defining what wounded healers are. We always want to start off by just defining and giving people a sense of what the topic we are choosing to discuss is about. So I want to just share on just kind of broken homes versus traditional homes or intact homes or families.
Hmm.
I don't know. I guess because broken homes can be defined by so many different things and it's so different for everybody. Honestly, sometimes you don't even know that you were in a broken home until you start hearing, like, ooh, maybe this happened or this happened. And I think it's good for us to really, start here with this definition and really get an understanding of what it was. And look, if you are now just discovering that you were in a broken home based on some of the things we said, it's okay. It's good to know so that you know where to heal from, and it will help you, understand and get some explanation on maybe some of the ways you're reacting and some of the ways that you're interacting with others based on the
Yeah.
broken home you grew up in.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. Um, I'll pull up one of my definitions unless someone wants to jump in with one.
Have at
Um,
it.
so just thinking about what we've learned, whether it be from our actual childhoods or from what we learned in school. I know for myself, I learned about, a traditional American family is a two-parent household, mother and father, a couple of kids. They come, they have a home, they might have pets, so that was kind of the biggest idea of what that means, right, at that time, which is, you know, I would say 1940s on. Um, but we're in 2023. What does a intact home versus a broken home look like?
Mm.
I know in our community we we struggle with a lot of defining what a single parent means, or defining what a good family means, or what those things mean. And I know for myself, uh, my mom wasn't even old enough to be considered a woman when I was conceived and therefore born. So from the gate, out of the jump, I know I came from a kind of a broken home, and That was a weight that I carried for a while, and had to do a lot of soul searching and therapy in order to work my way out of. But what about you two ladies, Jermaine and Lilac? What are you looking at when we're talking about these broken homes?
So like Chris said, the understanding that society throws out there is that a traditional home is man, woman, 2.5 kids, a dog, and a white picket fence.
Come on.
Whether they are middle class or not, they are not living paycheck to paycheck in somebody's hood. Okay. So obviously I knew from jump, like from the beginning, there was something far untraditional about my home. My mother was working like 2-3 jobs to take care of me and my older brother, and we weren't small kids, so like we were like coming out of clothes and we were eating and we were growing at like fast rates, right? And the fact that well, my brother's father and his family was more in the picture than my paternal family was. So it's kind of like all I knew was government assistance and a hardworking mother. And I'm like one of those it took a village to raise me type kids, because everybody and their mama was watching me and helping my mom take care of me, like my aunts, my uncles, my godmothers, my so when I started going to church family started helping me out. So there was nothing traditional about it. But I mean, we make it work. And I think, when you think about what's healthy versus broken, I think healthy families learn how to navigate through the difficulties that life throws at them.
That's good.
Right? Dysfunctional or broken families is like, there's a lot of things that are breaking and cracking in the house. And it's like, I can't patch it all together. So that was my understanding of families growing up.
Yes.
Yeah. I share similarities with both of you. Even before we came on, I was like I knew my family was broken, right? I mean, because there was so much tension and arguing, but my parents were still married. And so then I'm like, do I qualify as a broken home? Because, if we're going by the definition, okay, no, we didn't have a dog. There were biological children of my mom and dad that was still in the home. We had a home. It was in a nice part of town. Do I still qualify? But yeah, I mean, I think when we're looking at the origin of, okay, who created this system that we have to judge by, this rubric, this criteria that we have to use. And I know you were mentioning that too, Jermaine, like, okay, who made this and why are we having to use this as a comparison?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't fit everybody and everyone can't fit into the shape of it, right? Some of us spill over and spill out. So there was a lot of tension, a lot of arguing in the home that I grew up in. It was absolutely broken, even though it looked whole. And if you bring the church into it, that's a whole nother tangent I won't even go off into. If you bring the church into it, right, there's a level of masquerading and there's a level of, okay, I have to put on a facade to make sure I look a certain way when I get in the church. That creates brokenness and it's fragmented. And I'm like, here, but I know at home it's rough. And, so that's a whole different layer. And then my parents got divorced, and then you also get divorced from your church family too, right? We don't want to talk about that. So there's the house, the church is a home. It's a house. It's a house of God.
Yeah.
We're not just talking about, I know for me, it just wasn't a family home. It was a church home that was broken too, that was destroyed and shattered. So that's a whole nother layer of it. Like 2 homes broken, and I have to now wade through these adult feelings as a child. I'm like, all right. I too had to do a lot of healing from that. So that kind of is the gist of how I grew up.
Yeah, I think thank y'all for sharing that. I think kind of the root of a lot of what we talk about is, oh God, what's going on in those relationships. I think a lot of it is rooted in those relationships that we have, right? Our relationship to our mother and our father, our relationship to our siblings and what those things mean. And a lot of people end up what I'll say, a lot of people, youth who become adults end up suffering because of the dynamic between mother and father, right? Um, that's what was the idea of what was in my household, and I know now in 2023, families look a lot more different than what we were accustomed to or grew up in. I know again, my mother, my mother's side comes from the Caribbean. My father is Black American, so the values that he has and the value, my mom's values kind of dominated the values that my father had automatically, because that's the home environment I was raised in. And again, being it takes a village to raise a child type kid, you get a certain understanding, or I don't even say understanding, but you always question things as to like, oh, why aren't my parents together? Or you see these ideas that, um, if you look at family in nature versus family in nurture, right? There are things that may contradict themselves. There are things that align, right, for survival. Family staying together, making sure that the kids are the priority. But as we look at time and through time and how things operate, that's not always the case. Um, and I think really kind of examining that, the history of that. I know, like I mentioned before, like my mom was 15 when I was born. My father was in his 20s. So then you can do the math at that point and kind of think about, okay, that was essentially statutory rape. That was, because my mom had didn't have her mother growing up. She had mother figures for sure, but she didn't have her mother. And I think that, because of that intergenerational brokenness, played a part in how she raised her kids and who myself and my sister are as people. My sister and I are now both parents. My sister's in a relationship with her son's father, and I'm co-parenting. And if I had to look back and rewind time, that wouldn't have been the goal, but that's the outcome, and that's kind of my job now is to role model what that looks like for my daughter, right? Who, if one day she decides to have a family for herself or not, what that healthy dynamic looks like, as opposed to what I came from, or what my mom came from, or my father came from. But yeah, no, I think it touches on a lot of things. The relationships with our parents, between our parents. I know some families are very much like hush hush on what happens or what occurs, and again, like we talked about in the previous episode, not preparing children for these adult consequences and adult themes. And I know we have some statistics on like mental health outcomes and like life expectancy and outcomes. I don't know if someone wants to share those and just kind of loop those into the conversation so we can get an idea or share with the audience like what exactly the outcomes are for people who come from those type of things.
Mm-hmm. I think the misunderstanding or misconception is that broken homes means like a divorced home or just a single parent home. But I think what Steph's story brought out was like you can have both parents in the house and it still be just as dysfunctional or just as broken as like a single parent home, whether that single parent is a mother or father. It's like broken homes are, like when you look at what defines as a broken home or a broken family, the definition we had is a broken family is one that includes unhealthy or severed relationships within the family unit. They are often associated with divorce, but certainly can occur in an intact family where various members are in conflict with or estranged from each other. And I feel like, that's what Steph was sharing, and that was her story, is that broken homes, it doesn't matter how many people are in there. If there's tension, if there's conflict, if there's resentment, if there is disagreements on how to parent, if there are enmeshed boundaries, which basically means like the boundaries exist, but no one knows who, like it doesn't, like if you have like mother child relationship, sometimes the child is parenting the parent.
Yep.
Sometimes the parent is very passive and it's just the boundaries aren't clear. That's what enmeshed means. So I think broken families is way more layered than just divorce. I mean, usually, or up until I guess last year, they said that 50% of marriages ended in divorce. But now apparently we're down to like 37.2%, which is great. Which is great.
Well, it's only because people aren't getting married anymore. I'm not trying to rain on the parade,
that is
but
fair.
the number of marriages have gone down, so that percentage will go down. It's not that we're doing better with marriages. It's just that people, maybe because they don't want to end up divorced, they're just not getting married.
That's fair.
I've
I
been
mean,
to more funerals than marriages in my life, so it's fortunate.
being single, a lot of people like, why get married? It's just a piece of paper. It's just legal, blah blah blah. And I'm like, hey, listen.
And especially if you come from a divorced home, like you're like, I don't know if this is what I want to do. That's another level of brokenness. Like you're like, I'm all set.
Yeah.
Yes. I feel like in this, especially in this topic, and I talk about it often with a lot of people I'm around, is like in mesh relationships, a lot of people don't know how to define what their roles are in relationships, right? Obviously, the masculine and feminine, or both of the same gender, or whatever the case is. Like a lot of people don't know how to be in a certain role. And if you're coming from a single family, sorry, there have been men who have been in and out of my life consistently, but my mom was the one who, if I had a problem, I went to her. If I needed something, I went to her. If I, hurt my knee, I cried for her. Like it wasn't, I didn't really have that understanding of, okay, I can also go to my father as well. And for a lot of people, that limits the perception of what they have or what their role is. So, and I think, the arguing and not understanding what and societal pressures adds to that. So yeah, it's easier to be alone, right? Because you don't have to be held accountable to, either on the spiritual side, that foundation of what marriage means in a religion, or literally the state paperwork, what that means in terms of everything you give me is half of everything. What you make is half of everything. What we do together is half of everything. So, and a lot of people don't have a lot to be giving half of anything to. So, kind of examining those roles. And I think if we had a better understanding, and I know, like, Michelle Obama talks about it often, about when Barack was president, and sometimes she was giving, 70 and he was doing 30. Sometimes he was giving, 60 or 40. It wasn't always 50-50. And I think getting away from that and clearly defining, what type of lifestyle do we want to live? How can we make that lifestyle happen? And do we want children? Because a family can just be two adults. It doesn't have to be, another generation involved. And defining those things. I think that level of self-awareness, a lot of people are starting to have. And as Steph shared, the reason the number is low is because people aren't getting married now. But at the same time, we knew during the pandemic, all people wanted were to be connected. So it's not less people being married, but more people still wanted connection. So how do we bring those things together to make a more successful, and I would say, Black families, especially Black family outcome, is always what my priority is.
Chris, you said something, and I feel like although we try to like tread carefully, this is a podcast full of real people, so we're going to talk about real life stuff. You know what I'm saying? So in the church, right? Like you're given this tier, and how does it? It's like there's Jesus, there's a man, and then there's the wife. And it's like, yes, yes. Because if we're following someone, but it's like if we're all not following Christ, I mean, that's the important thing. And how people understand their roles is what leads people to
Y'all
this
are the experts.
tension.
I mentioned it, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to get too deep into it. Y'all are the experts in that area. So,
Well, that's okay, because you got ministers on here. So
Hello. I mean, it's something we have to talk about. I mean, it's like, I don't know. Did it help us or did it hurt us to have marriage so promoted in the church? And then like, okay, we know the leadership and who's the head and things like that. What I've seen a lot of, and I'll just speak from my own personal experience. I've seen a lot of women kind of coerced into following a man who might not be able to lead. And this isn't bashing anyone, it's just a reality, right? You come from a broken home. Now you're creating another generation of broken homes to birth children who will be born into a broken home, who will then raise up children in broken homes. It just keeps going on and on and on and on. And so if we don't put a stop to this mess, right? If we don't become the generational curse breakers and say, I was raised in a broken home. My parents did not apologize to me. There was a lot of arguing. There was a lot of tension. There was a lot of foolishness in the family home. But now if we're incorporating the church home, because that's a home too. Most people, or a lot of people, I know when I was growing up, out of the 7-day week, I was at church 6 days. I was going to say 7, but I think one day we weren't. And maybe it was every other week we were. That becomes your home. That becomes your family life. And that's why when people leave the church, it's like you're leaving a family. You're leaving your home. There's a lot of broken homes in the kingdom.
Oh, yeah.
And then what happens? You don't heal. You just go to another church or you start your own church. You start your own church on the foundation of a broken home. That church is going to remain broken no matter what.
Right.
So if we don't stop this thing at the root, that's why I'm like, I'm just hearing you both talk. I'm like, ooh, even just for the three of us and for anyone else who's going to be listening, like we can decide, I don't want to operate from the lens of a broken home anymore. Yeah. I'm actually all set, well, and it is the reason why I took so long to, I had my first boyfriend at 32, right? I'm still toying with marriage. I'm like, is that something that I want to participate in? I was in a broken home. Is that something that I want to engage in? Am I ready? And then I'm like, yeah, I do, because I want to show this is how it's done. All the things that happened, we have the opportunity now to say, this thing has to stop with me. And I will not raise another generation of broken children who are raised in broken homes, whether in the church or in my family home. I'm making that declaration. Like, I can't. I know what it did to me. Why would you want to put any child through that, or your husband or your wife through that? Like, we have the opportunity to stop. And so those who feel helpless or like, oh, I don't know what to do, we can make the distinction. Like, I don't want to raise anyone in a broken home. I don't even want to be in a broken home. So those are decisions and choices we can make. And it's hard to do that. It's easy to say, but it's very hard to do. Yeah. It's hard to unlearn brokenness.
Unlearn it. Yes, Steph. Yes.
I mean, and there's a level of giving up control, right? Trust. Idea of trusting that, okay, this person has me when I'm not myself, or this person, I'm supposed to. How am I supposed to show up when I don't always feel 100%? Because no one is going to be at 100% every single day. And,
no.
Giving up that control to another is scary, right? The absolute, this idea of what we have of freedom, right? Because we think being single is freedom, but as the pandemic showed, and a lot of things showed, like being single, you lack the connection, or you lack the, and I wouldn't even just say affection, but that certain level of protection and peace of mind of knowing it's not, the weight is not all on my shoulders. And I think for a lot of people, that is a difficult thing to unwork from, right? If we've seen that, my dad left my mom, or my mom left and got a new husband or did whatever, so why would I want to let someone try to do that to me. And there's a certain level of risk that some people don't want to take. But I think in the essence of relationship, right, love aside, it can be a beautiful thing if you let it. But there's also that idea of can you let someone else say no, I got it, and let them actually have it, as opposed to looking over their shoulder every 5 seconds to make sure they're not they're doing it your way or however we're taught.
Honestly, you both were alluding to like this generational trauma that gets passed down in these homes.
Yes.
And let me tell you, like, something I've learned, not just through my own experience, but as I continue to grow in the field that I'm in, is that most of the brown and Black communities are so conditioned to be in survival mode that survival mode doesn't allow you to tap into the things that Chris was saying. Like, you're not going to be self-aware in survival mode. You're not going to check your emotions in survival mode. You're not going to check your behaviors in survival mode. And because you're in survival mode, that means you have a lot of mistrust, because survival mode is, I have to count on self and instinct in order to make it to the next thing. And that doesn't mean bringing someone else into my circle to be like, hey, can I just kind of like give you some of this? And so we carry it. And it's almost like, every time we carry it, we open up the wound, and then we're just like leaking on everybody else and expect someone to like help us heal, but then we don't trust anyone to help us heal.
It's
right?
a catch-22.
Yeah, so we're just stuck, we're just hurting, we're bleeding, we're struggling, and we're trying to survive. And nowhere in survival mode does that allow for healthy families and healthy relationship. And because you only have a relationship with self in that moment.
Yes.
You don't trust the systems that you're a part of. You don't trust the people that you're surrounded with. And because of all of that, that further emphasizes the broken homes and the broken family systems that exist.
Yeah, it really does. And me coming from a broken home, like, I can identify that hyper independence, or like that super independence. That's a side effect of a broken home. If no one can do anything for you, you have to do everything for yourself. You can't trust anyone to keep their word and things like that. Not because people haven't shown you that they can keep their word. You don't even give them the opportunity to keep their word. And a lot of people are operating like that. I used to operate like that. I thank God for healing, because it's no way to live. I can't trust you. I don't even care if you show that I can trust you. I don't do it. I can't, you know what I mean? And it is alluding to what Chris was saying, like, okay, I always have to be in control, because controlled people control people. And so if I was very controlled in my childhood, I have to have my hand clenching around everything. And often we squeeze the life out of things because we're like, I can't allow you to pry my hands off this, because if I'm not in control, then I don't trust it. That is no way to live. And it makes it nearly impossible to be in a healthy relationship, not just a romantic one, a friendship, anything. You can't even interact with your coworkers right, because the brokenness is just spilling over everyone. And I'm like, wait a minute. If we don't become self-aware, all these topics that have just been mentioned, if we don't become self-aware with that, okay, we have to first acknowledge I am broken. There's something that happened. Now, how do I want to get healed? How do I want to get fixed? If we can't even come to that understanding, we're done. We're doomed. Because we could get married. Any one of us could have been married.
Yeah.
It's a decision.
Yeah.
You say, oh, I don't want to encounter that. Nope, I see red flags. I don't want to do that. Broken people, you say I'm going to get married. You bring that brokenness right into the marriage, and it doesn't just fade away. It actually increases, because the trust issues increase. And women, that masculine energy will turn up, because you're not even giving the man a chance to do anything. Like, men, you'll start talking bad about the woman. Oh, she's not doing anything. Or you'll just kind of fall back, because maybe you saw your mom, take the lead and do everything. There's a lot, guys.
Yeah,
The
man.
more you talk about it, the more I'm like, oh, It's a lot. And
The layers, you just
it's layers. It's layers. And it's like an onion. And it makes you cry. If you stop
yeah.
listening back enough, it makes you cry. You start cutting into this, you cry because you're like,
Mhm.
ooh, this is a
Right.
lot.
Right.
It's a lot.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And like, how do you work around it? Like,
Oh,
I think the fear of how do I take, and this is why Wounded Healer was episode 1, right?
had to
Because
be.
the the fact that it is, there needs to be an understanding that yes, you can get better. And like Steph said, there's things we have to unlearn. You have to unlearn trauma. You have to unlearn familial cycles. You have to unlearn
Arguing with everyone.
yeah, like you can't, like the brain is always trying to get rid of memories to make room for new ones. And
Mm-hmm.
the only way to get rid of those nasty ones is to stop rehearsing them. Like
Come
I know,
on.
even for me, for other people, it's like what you keep up here is what your brain is like, oh, that must be pertinent information. So we're just going to keep that and we're going to throw out
Yep.
all of those good ones. And so,
Yep.
like, I remember I asked my clients all the time, like, so tell me about, what problems you have. They're like, boom, 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 boom. I was like, all right, thank you. Now
Yep.
tell me about some joys you have. They're like, hold on, this might take a minute. And I was like, don't you think that's a problem? And I think it's because
Mm-hmm.
you're constantly rehearsing all of the negative things. And again, as brown and black folks, we are constantly not just rehearsing it within ourselves, but the messages that get pushed on us are like, you'll always be broken and
Yep.
you'll never be this. And the
Yep.
system isn't created for you. So why even try? And there's this many percentage of black fathers in jail. And so it's
Yep.
like we can't seem to break out of this traumatic bubble. And
Mm-hmm.
even when you talk about like post-traumatic slave syndrome and how we've carried that
Oh,
over, and then there's colorism even in our community, and it's just like there's so many things that we are working against. And so when Chris mentioned like black love, how do you maintain the black family? How do you maintain the black home when most likely you're entering in communion or like fellowship, or that's churchy word, sorry, you're entering into an agreement, a union, there we go, it was coming,
union.
a union with someone, and both of you guys are healing from broken situation. It's like, so how do we make this work?
I think, and I know we're all advocates and proponents of therapy, and I know a lot of people don't have. We know a big major issue is the lack of access to therapy, but I think that's one of the biggest things for when you're going into that mindset and idea. It's like, what, right? I can say I want a wife, right? I can show off and say, oh, I gotta look at the ring I bought and I got a wife, but what does that mean, right? Because if we're not defining again what that partnership as a man, what is that? What does husband mean to you, or what does wife mean to me, or whatever your relationship dynamic looks like. What do you need out of that? I think a lot of people, and I know, like, we have those shows that are like, oh, meet my family, before, and you can see right then on there, okay, I see why he acts like that, because his mama's his wife, right? Or I see why she acts like that because daddy wasn't there and she's looking for, so it's like you can always point the finger, right? But when it's pointing back, three are pointing back on us, it's like, well, I'm still ready for, and I can't get this because this, but in reality, what are we looking at within ourselves? And if I know for me, like, therapy is the deciding factor on if I will be even interested in you for marriage or not. Because if you're not aware of those things, then you're still stuck in your hurting mindset as opposed to healing, right? And it's just the idea that means you might not be able to hold yourself accountable or say when you're wrong. And I don't have time to be gaslighted or to be made to be crazy, because again, the world has already done a great job of that. But I know who I am and what I stand on, and it's not judging anyone, right? Because we're all on different journeys. Again, like I mentioned on the last podcast, like if I wasn't interested in this field, I don't know what my life outcome or expectancy could have been.
Right.
But because I know, I know what to look for now or to see. Well, maybe now is not the right time, but it's okay. Maybe at some point they could be something. But knowing the work that I have to do as an individual, the work that we have to do as individuals in order to address those things. And the biggest thing for me was like always asking those questions, like getting both sides from my parents. Right, I was raised by my mother, so I always knew her side of the story. But talking to my father and hearing his side and kind of the things that he was dealing with that prevented him from being as active as I would have liked or he would have liked to be. And a lot of that is pain, right? That pain that we have that we don't want to be vulnerable to, because again, it's as if as if expressing that weakness makes us a lesser person. And obviously, we know the tremendous amount of pain that Black men and Black women deal with on a day-to-day basis. But it's like, as opposed to uplifting each other and having each other's back, it's just like more needles and stab wounds in the back, because we're measuring, okay, who's hurt worst, or who's got more issues, or well, my daddy wasn't there. Well, yeah, my daddy was there, but he beat me. And it's like, well, all right, well, the physical wounds, are just as bad as the ones that we don't see, right? So those are things that we gotta be mindful to as well. And I think I like the fact that social media can be a good thing for those things, but we still have to do the work and kind of do the work on ourselves before jumping into it. Because there's nothing worse than, I can only imagine, being married, whether it's for faith or agreement, and then having to not go through, not having that follow through, and having to carry all that pain and stuff. Because again, I don't, my mom was married before, but not to my father, and I know how difficult that was for her then. So I can only imagine, sharing entire family systems and friendships and other relationships and all this stuff, and then having to break those ties.
Yeah, and it's so tough. I was telling Jermaine that my dad's been married 4 times. He's on his 4th marriage. I mean, it's the truth. It's the reality of what it is, But he'll be the first one to tell you that he had to really get healed to make sure that he was hearing from God on who he should marry. And the woman that he married, my stepmom, he should have always married her. They've known each other for years, And so really stepping into this thing, I know for me, that's why I went into marriage and family therapy, because it means so much to build up a good foundation. And it's so detrimental to have a bad foundation, right? I mean, just throwing another stat out there that we had gathered, 70% of prison inmates come from a broken home. That says something. That says something, that those in lockdown, those in the pen, in the big house, something happened in your home that made you do something, that had you go here. Maybe you had to sell something, maybe you had to take something, borrow something without the promise of ever returning it, however you want to look at it. Maybe you needed to interact with a certain group of people. Maybe you needed to do something for your survival because your home was broken, and that's how you ended up there. There's a lot to be said about that and what that means. And again, I have to keep going back to those who come from a broken home. It's our responsibility to stop it and to cut it off with us, that we don't keep the cycle going and going and going. That is a heavy responsibility, but it's something that we have to do. That's the only way we'll see our homes being restored, that we, the ones who come from the broken home, don't keep doing it, because you do see that generational stuff that you were talking about, Jermaine. Mom came from a broken home. Something happened in the relationship. Either have children, divorce, or maybe they were never married and now it becomes literally a single parent home where just one parent is supporting. Then that child grows up in that environment, and all they know and all they see is that brokenness. and you get attracted to brokenness. I'm telling my life story. You get attracted to brokenness because it's all you see. You're talking about being familiar with brokenness. So you see someone who's broken, and maybe you say, I just read a post about this. I'm going to fix this person because I couldn't fix my dad. I couldn't fix my mom. I couldn't fix my brother. So I'm going to get with this narcissist. I mean, in the true sense of the term, not just the fad word that everyone's throwing around right now. That's just a buzzword.
Right.
Oh, you're a narcissist. Anywho, that's a whole different topic. I mean, someone who is for real, you end up getting with them because you're trying to fix something that's broken because you couldn't do it in the past. We have to heal because we'll just keep the broken cycle going and going and going. That's why we see our community the way it is. That's why we see our church the way it is. That's why we see our society the way it is. Because that broken wheel is just crushing and rolling over everybody. And until someone says, oh, I'm going to be the peg in the road, I'm going to be the stick in the road. That's what I say to my clients. I'm the stick in the road on your bike path. You're just tra-la-la-la-la riding on your bike path. I'm going to be the pebble. I'm going to be the stick in the road to knock you off your bike. So when you get up, you say, I can take this path or that path. We, the wounded healers, those in this field, we have to be the ones to be the stick in the road. I'm going to show you that when you get up, you don't have to go on the same path you were going. There's actually another one, a more healed one that you can take. You talking about that broad and that narrow path? Not trying to be churchy, but hey, broad is the way, huh? And narrow is the way. Not many people choose that path because it's hard to work on it. It's hard to work and to walk on a healed road. You have to do so much work that most people are like, I don't want to do it. I'm going to remain in my brokenness because this is all I know. And I'm familiar here and I'm comfortable here. And my mom did this and my aunt did this and my cousins did this. So we have to choose to be different. And being different is often so different than what we were raised in, that we're having to relearn everything and parent ourselves and adult ourselves and all that. So
you know, I think we forget that our families are our first teachers.
Yes.
And it's like, well, what did we learn? Right? Like, I think one of the problems is if you don't have access, like Chris was saying, or if you don't have the language as to what it is that is the toxifying, problem infused part of the system that is your family, how do you detoxify from it? Like, how do you unlearn something and you don't have the word or the verbiage or whatever to say it? So, like, you know, something that me and my best friend Crystal was talking about, we were talking about attachment styles, and she's like, you know, you have an anxious attachment. I was like, all right, so first of all, don't be diagnosing me, but I'm listening. And an anxious attachment style, it stems from being anxious that people are going to leave, so you become a people pleaser. And your boundaries, what are those? Because you just want people to stay around, and that came from a broken place in me, because I was like looking at my dad and looking at my brother and seeing the men in my life, and it's like, well, where are y'all going? Like, y'all don't love me enough to kind of like stick around. Like, something's always pulling you away from me. And of course, it's not just from me. People have their own lives. But growing up, all I understood was, you say I'm amazing and you love me, but what I'm seeing is that you're walking out the door. And if you're coming back, what condition are you coming back? And so from that, I formulated this anxious attachment where, you know, I form strong attachments quickly. And then it's like, oh, okay, this is cool. We're going to hang out here. And then it goes away. But had I not had the term to attach to what my behavior was, I wouldn't know what I have to change, because I wouldn't know what I'm looking for. I wouldn't know what I'm digging for. And then it's like, okay, let me change that. And so if we don't educate families, if we don't educate individuals who go home and educate families who then impact the community, we're just out here continuing broken cycles because we don't know. And that's a problem. Ignorance is bliss, as they say. And ignorance is something that will always chisel away at the foundation if we're not careful. Chris, you made a face. What is that face, Christopher?
I mean, some would say that those with anxious attachment styles need constant reassurance and validation, but you know, my letters, You guys' letters are longer than mine, but
no, hold on, Chris. You have just as much experience.
I mean, yeah, I mean, my knowledge comes from the experience of reflecting and looking at the family dynamics that
Mhm.
are around me. I mean, and not only with the youth that I serve, but just in my own life because my family is so large.
Yep.
And you see, some of the family members who you can tell like they want that relationship, but based off of what they see, people being together because of circumstance as opposed to choice or trying to maintain something that's definitely not working. Um, it's like I said, it's easier to be alone.
Yeah.
But again, I think educating our community and that's what I do it for, and like I said, the next generation, so that way they know, or the current one, because I don't, I learn just as much from people who are older than me than people who are younger than me, and trying to keep an open mind. But I think if uh, we we really want to see change, it'd be great if I know some people have talked about the current families who if you are single parents, if you are co-parenting, getting back with the person who you have children with, so they can grow up in a household like that. Now the extreme situations where um, you know domestic violence plays a role in all those other things.
Right.
I definitely don't encourage that because those individuals have a lot of work to do for themselves. And I mean, we touched on a few things, but like substance abuse playing a huge role as a coping mechanism, and there's a whole there are books and a lot of literature on youth who children who come from homes where substances are used, or who come from homes where one parent is incarcerated and all these different things. But I think, really taking the time to examine what you want out of a relationship before jumping into it will save a lot of headache in terms of kind of, blindly saying, love is enough. You will learn quickly that love is not enough, you know, uh, and just kind of being realistic about it. And I think we want to have these rigid kind of lines and finite things to say. Well, this is what that relationship means, and this is what a partner is, and a lot of people miss out on those opportunities by staying within those boxes so heavily.
Yeah. Yeah. And they do. They miss out completely. Um, there's an openness that you have to have. There's like a, I don't know, like a new mindset, like a literally a new outlook on life you have to have in order to not fall back into those traps. Like you have to literally change everything, everything you were raised with, and everything that you thought was right. I think that's the thing too. Jermaine, you mentioned the home or the family being the first teacher. What if you realize that everything you've been taught was wrong, or a lot of it, right? We won't say 100%. That's dramatic, or that's drastic, or that's an exaggeration. There was some things that okay, I can deal with that. But a lot, let's say 80% of the coping mechanisms, of the ways of communication, of how to handle certain situations and address certain things in a healthy manner, just weren't taught. And so you have to like say, wait a minute, so I have to reprogram myself like a computer. And when I encounter these broken pieces of myself, when they start to come up, because that's the natural thing to do. If you were raised in that environment, your natural thing to do is to respond in a broken way. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
So I know for me, when I encounter a situation that could be stressful or make me anxious, because I also have an anxious attachment style, and I do need reassurance. I do need someone to be like, hey, you affirm me, please. Heavy on the affirmation, please, please, because I'll be like, oh, am I doing okay? Is everything all right? Those things go together based on abandonment and rejection. And if we don't get a handle on those two beasts, they will ruin our entire life.
Mm-hmm.
Abandonment and rejection will have you acting a way that you might not want to, but you're so afraid of losing someone, or you're so afraid of being excluded from the crowd and not counted as a part of the team or a part of the family. So you will lay down, you will be the doormat. And that all comes from that, like, ooh, this is how I was raised. This is how I saw someone having to be. You
Mm-hmm.
know, this isn't my story, but it could be like, hey, my mom did anything to keep my dad home, did whatever, said whatever, bent over
Mm-hmm.
backwards, sideways, you know, did handstands, and all this. So honestly, if you're raised like that, you could think you have to do the same. So it all goes back to that awareness too, though, Chris. Like, if we're not aware of this and having this under a microscope, or if we don't have the magnifying glass over everything, we're going to run into that same broken trap. And there's nothing worse than being healed and experiencing a level of healing, all to have it undone because you pull one thread that you weren't aware of, and that thing just come crashing down, and now you have to rebuild yourself again. Like that, that's trauma in itself.
Oh, absolutely. I remember having this conversation with my client, and basically the conversation was about exposing yourself to something that you're not accustomed to, because maybe you can learn from it. Because she, she obviously was raised in the hood and stuff like that in
Mm-hmm.
Dorchester, and she was like, "Listen, I thought how I understood life, yeah, that was something until I
Right.
went and I had this one white friend, went over her house, and I said, y'all actually
Oh,
talk, y'all actually sit at the dinner table and
like all
have
together?
conversations." Like, she was like, and then y'all pray, huh? Like, that's that's okay. And I keep telling people, like, if you ever have a question about, like, what is it like on the other side of this thing, like, I need to know what healthy relationships look like, because if
Mm,
all I've seen is divorce and abuse, it's like I can't find myself in a healthy relationship because I don't know what healthy looks like. I can't
right.
define it. I don't see it. I don't know how I fit into healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
it's like, get out of what you're used to, get out of your comfort zone, get out of what's familiar for you, and allow yourself to explore. Like, I can't say, because I haven't had like a serious relationship since high school. So it's like, when people, when you start dating and they're just like, so what do you like in a relationship? I was like, child, probably like I am in every like,
Right.
I don't know. Like, and I remember I was having a conversation with, my friends, and they're just like, so how are you gonna answer that question? Like, if you're not doing this, you're gonna have to replace it with this, and you
Right.
don't know what that is. And so it's like, well, listen, I'm still trying to learn, like, what healthy communication and healthy relationships look like, because
Yeah.
I talked to my mom Sunday after church, because I spoke on Sunday, and my mom was like, I didn't realize I had that much of a great effect on you. I just thought I was a horrible mom. I was like, Miss Pam, you was great. You did the best you could. I mean, were you a little emotionally unavailable? Sure.
Sure.
But like everything else you did, and it's because my mom was emotionally unavailable, my dad was physically and emotionally unavailable, my brother was emotionally available but physically unavailable. It's
Mm,
like I found myself craving it from other people, and
mm.
when you crave something hard enough, you're willing to throw away every boundary,
Everything.
every moral, every standard just to get it. And it's like, that's unhealthy. Like, is it healthy? Because when God created us, He created us as people of companionship, so we need that. But if I'm willing to throw my standards and values out the door to get it, it's not worth having. My mind
No.
is too expensive, my heart is
Mm,
too expensive, my soul is too expensive, my purpose is too expensive, my ministry is too expensive for me to just be like, but he's cute though. And like, yeah, there's red flags, but if I'm saying me and my husband, whoever and wherever he is,
come
if
on.
we're
Speak
supposed to
them. Speak
create,
about them.
oh, he's yep, he's close. His GPS system might have been off a little bit, but anyway,
Okay, Lil.
uh, but like,
Chris is like, come on, shut up, y'all. Stay on track.
I've said that plenty of times when Chris and I were having conversations. Like, I don't know if he's using like MapQuest and
He
doesn't
is.
realize that like
Yeah.
there's an advancement in technology, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I digress. If I want me and my husband to set standards for generations after us, I have to make sure that I'm in the position to do that, which means I can't go in there unhealed, unattended to, and then expect him to do more work than he asked for. That's not fair to him. So I have to make sure like I'm healed, because if I'm demanding healed, I have to be healed. If
Come
I'm
on.
demanding strong communication, I have to give strong communication. If I'm demanding support, I have to make sure I am that support. Too many times we ask for stuff and it's like, but you're not even that. Like, I can't say, like, Lord, send me a nice fit, tall, dark, and handsome little mocha man, and I'm over here flabby and lazy, and it's not that. So it's like, if you're gonna ask for it, make sure that you are prepared to receive that, because it comes with a weight. Like, I can't say I want an entrepreneur and expect him to be home every day at 5 o'clock, because that's entrepreneurs don't do 9 to 5s. So you have to prepare for what you're asking for and make sure that your life and your heart is receptive to what you're asking for. Because if God gives it, you better be ready. So I'm like, Lord, let me get ready, because I'm ready. Sorry, I took up. Yeah.
You know, just wanted to sit in that moment, you know, from your mouth to God's ears, you know, boom. Get ready, get ready,
This
get
is
ready.
facial expressions that are getting because
And
like
they're
he's
so
laughing
loud.
at me and I know
Let's
it,
segue.
but
Let's
it's just like, it's okay.
going back to the topic at hand of broken families. Since we're almost hitting our hour mark, I think everyone made good points on what we should be looking for or what we should be providing in order to kind of stop that, right? And our history as a people is very divisive and very much, you know, there have been moments, right? Moments or movements in time where, you know, talk about Black Wall Street, then that's being destroyed. We talk about, you know, following segregation and, you know, but then our Black leaders are being destroyed. And then we have the crack epidemic, which, you know, put a lot of Black men in jail, a lot of Black women being single mothers. And, you know, now it's kind of at the point of, you know, what do we want our future to be? And I think just putting a spotlight on ourselves, right? Having that mirror of reflection and saying, well, you know, I know I'm not perfect, but here's what I'm working on. You know, can we work on it together? If not, then that's that. But really making sure that we add that humility back into the relationships of who we are. And in the long run, because we don't want to continue to trend in the negative direction that we're going in. You know, it should still be. It takes a village, right? But it shouldn't feel so disconnected. You know, we shouldn't have to put on a mask. And I think, Jamila, what you said earlier about, you know, who are you in a relationship? You know, I think who you are in a relationship should be who you are at any point in time. Like, it shouldn't be anyone different.
Right.
You know, who you are for that role, you know, it carries through your other roles as well. And not just, you know, because I'm this, now I have to be different. And I know that's something that I've struggled with in certain rooms that I'm in, and having to accept that, okay, well, I'm here, you know, it's clearly I'm able to be here, but, you know, how do I step into that power? And I think a lot of people, you know, already dismiss themselves based off of, you know, mommy and daddy.
Yeah.
Before they even give themselves a chance to do better. So I don't know. Do we have any final thoughts on the topic?
This was a heavy one.
You
Yeah.
sure?
This was a heavy one. You know, so if you were triggered maybe by something that was said, take a moment to really sit and process, right? And don't try to speed past, your emotions or your feelings.
Yeah.
Just take a moment to kind of feel how you're feeling, and should you need someone to talk to, find a trusted confidant, not just some random like find someone. Yeah, we're therapists, so yeah, we want to say find a therapist, someone who's trained in the art of hearing, receiving, and making sure that you're in a safe space, right? We have to watch
Mhm.
the vessels or the places that we're sharing our information, because that could make us more broken if we share information with someone that we're not supposed to, and they tell the business or they don't give us a response. Like that adds all to it. So there's wisdom when becoming unbroken, and really committing to the life of healing and being a healer and being healed.
Mhm.
There's wisdom that has to be used, awareness, big time awareness, big time discernment, and big time transparency. That's how I'll end it. This is a transparent process that you cannot heal from the trauma unless the truth really comes out. So we
Yeah.
acknowledge how we feel. We're not hitting the gas pedal. We're just kind of slowing down, processing, say la, sit in that, reflect on that, so that when we need to encounter something, it's not tripping us up so much. We're allowing our thoughts to process. Healed people are out there, and healing is a process.
Yeah.
And again, the brokenness stops with us. That is a commitment. We sign our names on that covenant, on that contract, that the brokenness stops with us, because we don't want to keep the cycle going. So
Mhm.
it's a big responsibility, but we can do it for sure.
Yeah. I would definitely say believe that healing is yours. I think when you come from broken spaces, you don't believe you have a chance to be healed. You don't believe that healing is a part of your story because all you know, all you've seen, all you understand is brokenness and fatigue and um, dysfunction.
Yeah.
Um, but dysfunctional things can still function.
Come
Like
on.
there's a ministry out there that says broken crayons still colors. So don't look at yourself as someone who can't have it. It is attainable, but like Steph said, it's going to take time. Healing is a process, and you're going to get there if you learn how to trust someone other than self, if you learn how to trust in God and family, or maybe not family, maybe friends. But like Steph said, seek wisdom and understand that it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be something that happens overnight. It's not going to be a one and done. Got it. Moving on. It's okay, and it's going to happen for you as long as you believe it. Um, but trust. I would say trust. So
Yeah.
Well, um, yeah, just to wrap up, I mean, I know I've talked about this topic extensively, just kind of in my poetry and things that I've written, and yeah, we definitely everyone deserves to heal. Take it one day at a time. If you are still physically in your broken home as you are listening to this, seek refuge in knowing that you're not alone, and
Mm.
that we are also here to provide support as well.
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. I think next topic is boundaries, which is a big one. Woo! So we're ready to jump into that. Throw some comments or some questions in the chat, that we can help answer, and all that. So let this mind be healed, and that's that.
There you go.